Welcome, everyone. We will be getting started in a minute, just allowing people to enter the room. Welcome, everyone. Okay, we will be getting started. Just one second. My slideshow's having issues, and we are now at 1:02, so let us get started. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar on mental health and climate resilience. We're glad that you're here. As always, I'm Pazarta Regan, by the way. I'm program manager at Catholic Climate Covenant, and we always get started with a little bit of housekeeping. Yes, the webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to everyone who registered within the next 24 to 48 hours. If you have any questions for the panelists, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. And you are welcome to use the chat to speak amongst yourselves, but not for questions for the panelists. That's in the Q&A box. And please remember to be respectful and civil in all of the chat interactions. As always, we get started with prayer, and I ask that we center ourselves and remember that we are in the presence of God. This is a poem, a prayer by Kim Tarman. It's called An Open Clearing, and it is one of the prayers in the new Feast of St. Francis resource, Spreading Seeds of Peace and Hope for Creation. I will put the link in the chat afterwards. So center yourselves. O God of vast spaces, may I be in heart, mind, and soul, that open clearing where any and all possibilities may enter. Stay or pass through uninterrupted, any hour of the day or night. Whether they be clothed in terror or joy, may I welcome them with a heart receptive, invite them to stay with a mind thoughtful, and bid them farewell with a soul unclinging. May I be that open clearing where both life and death can lie down together and rest through the night, where silence can sing her song unmuted, and where you can be seen dancing in every moment. May I be that open clearing where courage gives winged flight to imprisoned dreams of liberation, where forgiveness bathes the scarred terrain of the soul with refreshment, where transformation takes root in the sweet soil of expectancy, spreading its seed with jubilant thanksgiving across the wild and waiting landscape, blossoming into grace. May I be that open clearing where compassion and hope, justice and understanding can gently land, where echoes of peace upon the earth ring gloriously across the heavens, where you breathe harmony and wholeness into all of creation, a hallowed benediction upon all. May I be that open clearing where you can do your very best work. Amen. My Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Before I introduced our panelist, and unfortunately, I can't tell. Um, Sarah, can you tell me if Jyoti has joined? I'm unable to see the screen to see if she has.
No,
No,
I
not
didn't.
yet. Okay, so we will be waiting for our second panelist, and hopefully she will
Oh,
join us.
oh wait, she said she's here.
Oh, she is here. Okay, perfect. Let me get started, though, with a little context building about why we're doing this webinar on mental health and climate resilience. And one of the things that Catholic social teaching emphasizes are two concepts that are central to today's webinar: integral human development and the idea of ecology of daily life. Integral human development means that human fulfillment is connected with physical, mental, and spiritual wellness. You can't have it without that. And if you see there in that box, everything there is connected. The spiritual, the social, the political, the financial, the natural, physical, all is needed for integral human development. And Pope Francis championed that in Laudato Si, and he also championed the idea of the ecology of daily life, or the interconnection between our physical environments and our daily experiences. How our homes, our neighborhoods, our cities, our ecosystems, our general environment influence our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. All of it influences our overall well-being. So climate change impacts both integral human development and the ecology of human life. And these impacts are greater on people of color, on the poor, on the unhoused, on those who are pregnant, the elderly, and youth, young people. So we're delighted today to have with us two amazing experts in the field in the area of climate impacts on mental health and how to build reliance. Their presentations will help us discern how we can be what Pope Francis called the church of a field hospital and equip ourselves, our schools, our parishes, our communities, our religious communities to respond to the mental health impacts of climate change. So, with us today, and I messed up on the slideshows, I'm very apologetic, is Dr. Jyoti Mishra, Associate Professor, Department of Psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego, and Sarah Newman, Executive Director of the Climate Mental Health Network. I will put both of their bios in the chat, and you will be able to read their longer bios. So at this point, I am going to stop my share. Had I been sharing at all? Maybe not. Um, I apologize. Somehow my sharing capabilities stopped. Jyoti, if you're there, I do not see you for some reason. Let's go get started with Sarah as I look for Jyoti. Um, Sarah, would you get us started? And while you're doing that, I am going to go search for Jyoti. She might be among the attendees.
Yeah, I think GOT's in the attendee section.
Yeah, I found her.
Oh, okay. So do you want me to still go or do you
I'm
want
promoting her to panelist.
Okay. So I'll pause.
Yes, thanks. All sorts of techie issues today.
Okay, perfect. It was great to be part of the wonderful attendees out here, but
Thank you for the patience there. I could not see the attendee bar while I was trying to share, so apologize.
no worries. Thank you for the introduction. I'm
You can
happy
go
for.
ahead and get started. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will share my screen and um, and so hopefully everyone can see my slides. Paz, can you confirm that?
Yes, your slides are being shown.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Jyoti. I'm, as Paz mentioned, I'm at the University of California, San Diego. And I also co-direct a University of California-wide climate resilience initiative. Really looking at, through my research, this intersection of the traumas that climate change and related disasters are resulting in, and then how do we critically build resilience in our communities. Sarah and the Climate Mental Health Network are doing amazing work in the field, especially with our communities and young children. So it's such an honor to share the stage with Sarah and discuss this topic. And I'll also go into how Paz found me, and that actually comes from this slide. Paz knows very well my father-in-law, Dr. Veerbhadran Ramanathan. Dr. Ramanathan has really been a stalwart in the field, looking at the signs of climate change and global warming, and done many critical studies showing the causes of warming related to emissions. And not only that, he has been an instrumental in bridging policy and science together, and working on protocols around the world to curb emissions that can protect our climate, our Earth from reaching dangerous warming levels, and really been an inspiration in this field. And here in these pictures is also my son, Ian, and we have been together since a very young age, been part of climate action, decarbonization efforts, as well as greening our own local ecosystems through individual actions that one can take, including renewable energy installations, or may it be composting. And really, Ian himself has a book at the bottom called Listen Up Kids, Our Climate is Changing. We learn the best from our peers. So he decided to make a comic book with a lot of jokes in it about it that would also engage little ones and kids. And he goes about and telling others about how to engage in climate action as well, and what kids can do about it as well. So he is on his own educational journey, and proud that this is an effort across generations. So, as a neuroscientist, which is how I was trained, working at the intersection of neuroscience and mental health, we've always been really looking at how we can improve mental health care for our communities. And despite the fact that actually, when we look at how our systems put emphasis on mental health, it's really one of the neglected areas of healthcare. As the slide shows, there are very few mental health care workers who serve large populations, 10 for every 100,000. If we look on average across the globe, at the same time, there are 1 billion people suffering from mental health disorders, especially disorders of depression and anxiety, which are very highly prevalent. 1 in 5 people suffer from that. The annual cost of these mental health disorders that cause disability and then lead to lower life productivity as well as early mortality is very high. And then when we look at actual budgets that are put on mental health care, that's very low. So the priority of mental health care is not very high in our systems. And then when we look at this conjunction of climate-related events, warming, weather extremes, or disasters that are driven partially by the increase in emissions and increased warming that then can trigger, in one area, they can cause floods, and the other areas they can cause wildfires. There's this climatic fluctuations that we have all experienced, especially even now in the US. So this is not just a phenomena that's relegated to a certain set of countries. We've all experienced this within our states. And our work in this field really started with when this was accelerating in the state that I live in, California. And one of the biggest fires that happened here was called the Camp Fire. It was in 2018. And this still remains California's deadliest wildfire to date. And we started looking at the mental health impacts of these fires. What we found in this case was that there can be very significant impacts, so that 35% of the community members can suffer from mental health traumas after an event such as a wildfire. And this leads to symptoms of post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and depression, all appearing together, which are, are beyond individual level symptoms. These are really community-wide symptoms, and we were the first to characterize this in some ways. The field of how our changing climate is affecting our mental health was also budding parallelly at this time in the last 10 years. We've just to pause and say that before this, we knew that emissions can have an impact on our respiratory health, our cardiac health, but really people had not thought about how our mental health can be impacted. We went on to also show that these climate change related traumas can impact our cognition. So in the real world, when we have to pay attention to tasks on hand, make proper decisions, all of these abilities can be really deeply impacted by having suffered from a traumatic climate event. And individuals can feel a sense of distractibility, poor decision making, which can really feel like a brain fog. And people have to understand that these are true symptoms even when these events have passed. These sometimes cannot be just acute symptoms. They can be long-term symptoms for which we need to provide better care. These are not anomalies, but are happening at significant rates in the population. We also went on to show that our brains, this is a brain map of brain recordings. We are able to do brainwave EEG recordings in the communities in collaboration. And we found that brains can be really hyper aroused. The red intensity that you're seeing here, that's on the frontal part of the brain. The nose is up top, so this is the frontal part of the brain. This is a highly stressed and hyper aroused brain state that comes about from feeling threatened and feeling that everything in the environment could be a threat to one's survival. So there's this stressed brain state that develops. And as Paz was mentioning, this fire happened to be in really a vulnerable region. So people are disproportionately being affected in terms of communities that are poor, that have poorer health outcomes. So I've circled the county where this particular fire happened, and this county is one of the poorest counties in California, has poorer health care rates, poorer just rates of social discohesion as well. There are rates in terms of higher divorce rates, and really a community that's struggling already. And we see these disproportionate impacts of climate events really hitting these communities very hard. And so there is a component here where we need to think about aspects of climate justice, how we can really protect the communities that are the poorest among us. And this is the effects that I talked to you right now are not just about, having suffered from a disaster, even though they are expanded when we go from experiencing one to more disasters. So on this graph, this was a study of approximately thousands of youth, 20,000 youth or so, and this is how many severe weather events that they had experienced on the bottom line, and on the left is how distressed they feel about the state of our planet and the future of our planet. The lines here are separated by our political affiliations, and we see that this extent of distress increases regardless of the political affiliation. More in a Democratic affiliation, less in a Republican affiliation overall, but there is, as we experience these weather events, there is definitely a increasing distress for our future and our communities being expressed, especially in our youth populations. So as a scientist, my goal is to bring these findings to the fore and to educate people about these symptoms that one can experience that extend beyond psychological symptoms to actual changes that are happening in the brain. But then it's also my job that I feel important to work with alongside communities. So this is just summarizing what I showed you until now, which is looking at the there's a huge mental health burden caused by climate trauma. It is really the worst is felt by communities that have done the least to cause it. The poorest of communities are being hit the most. These communities are already dealing with high levels of non-climate trauma, such as poverty, poor healthcare access, and so on. And we must address this sort of climate gap. So really moving towards this component of how we can think about all of these findings while all of this is happening, how we can move from educating about these findings to addressing and building a resilience together. And especially saying that, yes, mental health trauma is a robust effect that happens in the context of disasters, in the context of changing weather conditions, and how can we protect ourselves from it. In the research that we did, we simply found that at the individual level, there are very key abilities that we can hone in our own lives that can protect us in the changing environment. People who have a sense of personal resilient belief that I can, bounce back from stressors. We definitely see that when one has more religious and spiritual connections, then that resilient belief is also stronger. People who have a stronger sense of being mindful, being present in the current moment. So mindfulness is when we can really appreciate and be grateful for what we have today in this moment, and setting aside the traumas of the past and not letting them seep into and ruminating about them and how they might affect the future and how they might spread to a threat from every aspect of the environment. That kind of rumination is not healthy for us. So mindfulness really protects us and helps us be in that present moment. We also found that people who are healthy in terms of their physical activity are the ones who are resilient in this context at the individual level. And then there is a huge component of family and community ties. If you have stronger social bonds within your family, within your community, that creates a sense of resilience that you can face these environmental changes that are coming at us on a every few months or so. And that kind of support system and inculcating that support system is really important. And I really feel that our religious and spiritual communities have a big role to play in bringing us all together. And so really, in some senses, climate resilience is community-based resilience, where faith-based organizations have a huge role. We also find that many of these communities are starting programs where we collaborate, where we're learning to reconnect with the earth, with the nature that's around us. And this is an illustration of an ecotherapeutic session in nature where individuals are practicing mindful awareness in nature and really trying to reset those psychological and brain-based links where one can feel that nature in its most apocalyptic form that they had seen in a flood or a fire was extremely threatening, but let that be a one-time experience, and that nature and the earth is such a source of rejuvenation and such a source of a stress-free environment, and how we need to protect this natural environment. So having this sense of appreciation and mindful awareness of nature is what ecotherapeutic practices teach us. And also stewardship, it also teaches us how we can be good stewards towards the environment and be sustainable in our ways that we use nature for our daily living practices. And so really this kind of sustainable behavior change is embedded in this respect that comes for nature. So Paz actually got in touch with me through Dr. Ramanathan, whose picture I showed you, the earliest, the first in the first slide, and because we wrote a paper where we talked about how building social climate resilience requires these pillars to be in place. And what I've really been talking about is the central pillar of societal transformation, where we need to have these abilities to be resilient on our own and together. And these processes work in tandem with mitigation. How do we make our communities and systems greener and better prepared to protect us from future climatic change? How do we adapt better? If people have more access to mental health care resources earlier on, psychological aid earlier on, that can really help people be more resilient and not let the mental health impacts carry on for a long time. And then we also wrote in this work about how we can all support this transformation in society, where we want to be able to be good stewards towards the planet through aspects of climate education, social cohesion, building coalitions, and making policies for the long term and not just for the current 4 years where a current government is in place and then a new government comes along. But what are the policies that protect our future children as well? And so all of this together makes for a robust system for transformation. And again, I emphasized here in this work as well how faith-based organizations at the community level that build on spirituality to bring communities together play a huge role in this transformational cycle. And so finally, I will just talk very briefly what we're doing at the University of California. I'm a professor here, so part of my goals are to do education, especially for our youth, in terms of transforming climate distress into action. All the aspects we talked about in terms of connecting with nature, about being mindful, are things we teach in the classroom for our children. Many, our youth, basically, our undergraduate youth, many of our sessions are held outside in a natural environment. And the youth are also embedded in action projects where they collaborate with each other to really think about local action. Global awareness, but local action is extremely important. This initiative has shown great outcomes in terms of reducing climate-related anxiety, depression, stress, and also has increased a sense of efficacy together, coping with climate emotions, as well as being better connected with nature. All of these different aspects have benefited in the youth that have taken this kind of education. So I'll stop there. Thanking everyone here. Looking forward to your questions and also Sarah's presentation. And really, I think this is our opportunity where through dialogues like this, we can build towards a flourishing and resilience across generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoti. And thank you for focusing on the article that connected us, because I really think that that article connects the issues of mental health resiliency and how the faith community can step into that social transformation. Joining us next is Sarah Newman. So Sarah, please go ahead and share your slides, and hopefully you'll have a better slide sharing than I did at the beginning.
Okay,
Yes,
can
perfect,
everyone see this?
perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's working. Okay,
it's
great.
working. Yes.
Um, so let's see, is it sliding through? Yeah. Okay. So I am Sarah Newman, and I founded the Climate Mental Health Network because of my own struggles with climate emotions. And I'm just really honored and grateful to be here today. And thank you all for joining. Um, Now, before I dive into my slides, I just wanted to take a moment just to pause and reflect. So, there's a lot of information that's presented, and it's hard to take it all in. So, I just wanted to just take a moment. You can just keep your eyes open or close, and just noticing your breath for just a moment. Just taking a couple deep breaths in and out. Just one more breath in and out, and then just coming back as a group. And this is a technique called toggling. And you'll see that I'm going to be using it throughout. And I first learned about toggling when I started doing this work a little over 4.5 years ago. I've been struggling with climate anxiety since I was in high school. When I first started really learning about environmental issues. And I just always thought this is just who I am. I'm the one who's really anxious about what's happening, and I didn't really have people to talk to about it. And I just thought this is just who I am. And it was only in the past few years that I started to read about this thing called eco anxiety or climate anxiety that I was able to start to name it. And when I started doing this work, I had the opportunity to speak with someone. Jeffrey Keel is his name, and he was a climate scientist at the National Atmospheric Research Center for about 40 years. But he said about 20 years into doing his work, he said, I didn't understand why people weren't listening to us. You know, we're presenting all of this information about what's happening, and no one was paying attention and no one was responding. And he said, so I decided to get a PhD in psychology to understand what was going on. And he then realized that what is happening with climate change, it's beyond our brain comprehension in many ways. It's so overwhelming, it's scary, it's complicated, and people essentially they're shut down. And so he said, what I started to do then is when I would give these presentations with all of this, science and data and so forth, I would do this practice called toggling, which is taking moments for people to integrate the information, be able to reflect on it, and then moving on to the next bit of information so that people became better equipped to be able to really take in what is happening and to be able to better reflect on it. So this is something called the Climate Emotions Wheel that we created. So I just invite everyone really briefly in the chat, just share where you are at on the wheel right now. How are you feeling about climate change? What are the emotions that are coming up? So if you want to just share in the chat anything that you are feeling right now on the climate emotions wheel. This is something that we created with a Finnish researcher named Panu Pakala, who it's based on his research. He did a paper called The Taxonomy of Climate Emotions, and these are the most common emotions that people are experiencing because of climate change, but obviously there can be others that are not on it. And this is available on our website in 30 languages for free download, and also includes worksheets and activities to do with it. So in terms of prevalence of climate emotions, the majority of American adults are worried about climate change. And one of the things that's notable about this is that people, you'll often hear people say, I'm really worried about climate change, but no one seems to care. But it's really the majority of people are worried about it. And, and it's a lot of it is just that people are not talking about it and they're feeling isolated in their worry and concern about it. And then I'm just so this was something that GOT already brought up, but this is this Lancet study of the 16,000 Gen Zers across the United States. It's one of the largest studies of its kind. And, as GOT had said, the majority of young people across political affiliation, across every single state, are worried about climate change. 85% are worried about climate change. 60% said it's making them feel anxious or powerless. 43% it's saying it's impacting their mental health. A lot of really alarming numbers. The majority of young people said that it's influencing whether or not they want to have children. 52% said that they don't want to have children, and also influencing where they want to live and so forth.
Sarah,
Yes.
sometimes when you share, not from a slide, perhaps it cuts the bottom and folks are
Oh,
wondering.
okay. Sorry.
No problem.
There. Okay, is that better?
I think so, but there was a lot of folks saying they couldn't see the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
And then this was a similar study that was done in 2021 of 10,000 youth worldwide, and very similar numbers. And 75% said the future is frightening, and so forth. So sorry, I'm just going through the slides. So now I'm going to turn it over to Paz to show just a clip from a documentary film that we co-produced in a couple years ago, but just to give you a little bit of an understanding and sense of what young people are going through. So I'm going to stop my share, turn it over.
So last year, the UN described the current climate crisis as a code red for humanity. I'm really concerned about the future of the children being born today, essentially. And on a selfish level, I would like to have children, but with what I see at the moment, I'm not super sure it's a great idea.
I've always wanted to be a mom, and I feel like my desire or want to be a mother is being slowly ripped away from me the older I get, so that's really upsetting.
I can't morally justify raising a child in a planet that's literally on fire.
My generation will not get to grow old or enjoy the different stages and experiences that life has to offer.
Things that are predictable and have been predictable for a very long time are being ignored. So just not having a future in general is a pretty scary idea to grasp at 17.
Is there going to be a natural disaster that devastates my home? Are we going to have food shortages? Will I get left behind? Will my family get left behind?
My biggest fear related to climate change is that we are actually on track to lose it all.
I feel like I constantly see on the news about unprecedented fires and floods and hurricanes, and I think about how people aren't going to be affected by these things equally.
I live in Austin, Texas, so right now we're seeing triple digits and it keeps getting hotter in Texas from the last 2 years I've lived here. It's becoming more unbearable for folks to be living in this part of the region and seeing how that's going to affect us in the future and what we can do now to stop that.
Some people think of Iraq as just a desert, but it's much more than that. We have a beautiful nature and scenery distinctive to each region within the country. It would be devastating to see all that just get ruined with climate change.
Some of these experiences seem like they are far from us, but seeing people struggling to get water, as a person who has lived with water scarcity or water shortages for quite a long time, it's frustrating.
In BC, we have seen the impacts of climate change firsthand, from forest fires and wildfire smoke everywhere, to extreme cold and extreme heat that is so uncharacteristic. So we need to be sure that when we're talking about climate change, we're not talking about concerns for the future and solely anxieties for the future. People have legitimate fears, concerns, anxieties today.
My biggest fear in the future as it relates to climate change surrounds the lack of prioritization for the needs of disproportionately impacted communities of color and low-income communities.
I think my biggest fear would be people will continue fighting against each other and finding things to fear instead of focusing how we can work together and create solutions and think positively and help each other.
So I'm just going to pause for a moment, and if people want to write in the chat anything that they are feeling after watching that, and just take a breath. So it's a lot to watch. So feel free. And then we're going to go into what does it mean to build resilience. So I just wanted to share, this is called the zone or the window of tolerance. And I might go through these slides quickly, sorry, in the interest of time, and because some of it was covered by GOT, but just oh yeah, sorry.
Your notes are blocking the slide.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
A little better, but it's still visible, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll just take the notes off. Sorry.
I just love how our tech today is like.
Sorry, everyone. Oh, you know what? Because I'm not in, is it the full screen?
We see their full screen, yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Sorry. Apologies. But so we have a zone of tolerance or window of tolerance or the resilient zone. And this is where in the middle here. And the idea is, if you think about on the climate emotions wheel, where people might be feeling helpless or anxious. And in those places, it's very hard to function. That if you're helpless, you might be shutting down, you might be disconnected, withdrawn. And if you're in that anxious zone, you might, feel like you are in overdrive and you have to do everything possible to address the climate crisis. And it's how do we get into that middle zone, that resilient zone? And so this is something my colleague Larissa created, and it's looking at climate action and climate emotions. And so, understanding that emotions are a sense of our caring. And so when we're over here on the left, we're not able to engage in the climate emotions, and we're not going to be able to take action. And then when we're on this side, we're feeling, as someone said in the film, this is taking over my life, and it's totally overwhelming. And the idea is, how do we get into this middle where we're resilient, we're capable of engaging, and we're able to practice that self-care? And so this goal of resilience is about being open and empathetic and expanding our capacity to be with more, to be able to sit with all of the emotions. It's not saying to dismiss the emotions, but how do you sit with those emotions while also living with them, being able to experience what we all need and have a right to positive emotions, joy, wonder, connection, gratitude amidst the challenges of the climate crisis. And resilience being, that humanity has shown resilience through wars and disasters, and it's not something that's a superhuman thing. This is something that we each carry within us and have the ability to connect with. And this comes from, as Jyoti said, relationships, communities, emotional regulation, meaning and purpose. And one of those is negativity bias, that we are hardwired to negativity bias. And so how do we balance out that negativity bias? So, taking in bad news, balancing it with good news, for example. And as I said before, it's not the absence of negative emotions, but it's the capacity to experience positive emotions amidst the challenges of climate change. And how do we build these? It's through emotional strength, social connections, cognitive flexibility, physical health, like meditation and exercise. And so Rick Hansen has something that we've slightly changed, but he's a psychologist, and we have it: let be, let flow, let in. So facing that climate grief, dealing with all of the emotions that come up, and then letting in those positive emotions as well, the gratitude, connection, and really being in community. And there's some research showing about the importance of taking action and being in community, and how having climate anxiety actually leads to people taking action. And the importance of peer support as well. So we're just going to watch one closing bit of the film. So I'll stop my share. Paz, are you able to just show the closing clip?
And so there was this one moment, I was on an expedition with 2 from around the world. One moment when all 200 people went silent at an ice fjord, and we could literally hear icebergs melting. So think of that for a second. Millions of drops of the purest water on the planet falling into the freshest body of water that exists. But what I used in that moment was the connection with community.
What revives me emotionally is seeing others act as a community, advocating for action.
The thing that helps me to feel more resilient is by kind of leaning into engaging this area.
All of us are connected. We don't need to take more for ourselves than anyone else. We have to change society, and we have to do something different.
I find that I am most fulfilled when I am serving others and advocating for communities who have not been granted resources and a visible platform to discuss their ideas.
Having those communities, those networks of support, have been the ultimate form of resilience building, emotionally and mentally for me, and being able to also take what I've learned in my experiences and share them with other people.
Thank you. So let me see, sorry. I have to go back to my slides. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted, sorry, I know it's very rushed, but just to take one more moment, just close your eyes for one moment, take a breath in and out, and one more breath in and out. And if you'd like to, in the chat, just share a word or a reflection, a thought, a feeling, or an idea of how you're feeling now. And thank you all so much. And I apologize for the technical issues with my slides.
No reason to apologize. It happened to me. It happens to everybody. Um, Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Sarah. I should have perhaps done this webinar for an hour and a half and not an hour, so that it would not be rushed, causing more anxiety than needed. Uh, one of the things that really impacts me in both of your presentations is how critical community is to mental health and resilience. And if there's one thing that the faith community is about, is about building that type of community. So I do think that faith communities, whether they are parishes or religious orders or schools that are religiously connected, have a very large pathway of getting involved in this work. And that takes me to one of the questions. Is there a place when folks can find resources or guidelines that empower people to create that kind of community space for talking about this? Sarah, I know that in your website you have a lot of educator type things, if you could share that. Um, Jyoti, do you know of other places that might exist where folks that are interested in this can go and learn more? So maybe one of each can take a minute and talk a little bit about it. Sarah, do you want to start? Just give a little bit of where they can go.
Sure. So I'm just putting lots of links in the chat.
You are doing.
But we have all of our resources available for free. They're all available in English and Spanish. We have primarily resources focused on youth, parents, and educators, but then also a range of free resources for anyone and everyone, including like the Climate Emotions Wheel. We have climate grief resources. We have a guide, Climate Emotions 101. And we're going to be actually rolling out at a webinar next month. I'll put it in the chat, a new toolkit for parents and caregivers, but really anyone who's engaging with kids on how do you support and engage kids around their climate emotions.
Thanks. Jyoti, do you have some recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've coalesced on, this aspect of community building, is really important. How we read and assimilate resources versus how we really talk to each other about these issues are so profoundly different. Like even coming together in a webinar like this, being able to share our a different set of emotions and recognizing what we're all feeling in the context of planetary distress and is very important. So creating those local spaces can also be up to us. I think faith-based organizations, but even beyond them, youth have become more imaginative about this, and they're starting climate cafes where people actually come together and talk about their emotions and how each one of us is dealing with this and what kind of personal actions and collective actions people are taking. So having those conversations is really important. And one thing I'll add is finding our local sort of mindful experts or leaders, how we can connect with them so they can come be part of these conversations and lead sessions in spiritual awareness, in mindful awareness, as part of sharing of the emotions. So sharing information is extremely important, but building that local community conversation is even more important.
Excellent. Switching a little bit to something that was said about climate anxiety leading to climate action, that the more climate anxiety might be there, that can trigger more actions. And that is something that at the Covenant we have sort of said that in order to build hope, in order to spread hope, uh, we need to come from a point that not necessarily hopeless, but less hope, and build that hope in order, and that hope gets created with actions. How do you see that as a mental health strategy for folks? I mean, what in the for Yoti, what in the neural transmissions and all of the serotonins and dopamines and all that get triggered? But Sarah, you get us started.
Sure. I think that hope is essential to this work, and I wouldn't say that it's kind of hope in like a very like, oh, I have hope about what's happening or what I'm doing, but it's more this term that was coined by Joanna Macy, who was an eco-theologian and scholar, and she described it as active hope, and that it's actively, as you're saying, doing the work to create the world that you believe we can have. And I think that even it's really important for people also to think about gratitude and hope within the frame of um, incremental small steps, and not expecting the world that you want, the world that you're trying to build towards is going to be that reality in your lifetime, but recognizing that the work you do is important for now and for future generations, and seeing this as part of this ongoing kind of lineage that we're all part of. And also that, on the climate emotions wheel, there's a corner that is positive emotions, and that really doing this work can be inspiring and hopeful and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything that Sarah said. Anxiety, like climate anxiety, but general anxiety, and being having any kind of mental distress has these states where it's kind of a bell-shaped curve, where you don't want to have too little anxiety, or don't really shut it down in a way that it doesn't make a difference. And then there's optimal levels of anxiety that really are pushing us to create that Joanna Macy active hope, active action, to dissolve that sense of anxiety, but move into a sense of empowerment. And versus when we go into the other end of the bell-shaped curve, when we're so distressed that our responses freeze, when we're not really reaching out to others, we don't want to get into those holes. And really, it is up to us, especially important that when we are facing environmental challenges, that we reach out to the folk in our community who are quieter, who are not engaging with others, because they may be feeling a very high level of distress and not feeling that they can connect with others. Overall, from even from our brain's framework, we don't really want our really old emotional fear-based systems to be in control. We want our cognitive systems that regulate us and our sense of empowerment to be in control. And we see that these systems come online when we build that active hope. And as I've been stressing in the chat as well, really local action is key to that, being involved at our own community level. While we have the global awareness in mind, we can do a lot in being part of local action.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here with us today and sharing your wisdom and information. There's a lot of things in the chat that I will distill and put in the follow-up email. I will also put links for your article, Jyoti, with your father-in-law, Dr. Ramanathan, who I absolutely adore. Some of you on the webinar may know him. Some folks refer to him as the Vatican's chief scientist. So we have good folks in our midst. Thank you. It's almost top of the hour, so I will close us off. If anybody has questions, send them to me. If I can't answer them, I will ask Sarah and Jyoti for their expert opinion. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And always remember to take a breath and then keep working on these issues. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.